Okay, well, I think I'll start because people can join as we go along. My name is Liz Dunn. I'm the Learning Project Development Officer for the Safeguarding Children's Partnerships across Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland. And so this event is for everyone who works with children across Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland. You're very welcome. And I'd just like to introduce Kay Whyte-Bell, who is going to lead this session for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Liz, and welcome everybody to this afternoon's first launch of the Neglect Toolkit. So I am, as it says on the slide there, my name is Kay Whyte-Bell, and I'm the Independent Advisor for the Leicester City, Leicester County and Rutland Safeguarding Children's Partnerships. And you might be wondering what that actually means. So just in terms of very briefly background, I am a registered social worker and I've had a variety of roles in leadership, management, practice, and also inspection. So the role of independent scrutiny, although my role is, my job title says advisor, but it is scrutiny, is to provide assurance in judging the effectiveness of multi-agency arrangements to safeguard and promote the welfare of all children in a local area, including arrangements to identify and review serious child safeguarding cases. And the independent scrutineer should consider how effectively the arrangements are working for children and families as well as practitioners, and how well the safeguarding partners are providing strong leadership, and agree with safeguarding partners how this will be reported. Sounds a big of a mouthful, isn't it? So in a nutshell, what it really means is I'm to ensure or assure that children and young people are being served well, that investigations and assessments are done in a timely, transparent and child-focused way, with the voice of the child being central to strategic direction and ultimately what happens on the ground. I've been in this post for a little while now. I joined in at the end of September last year, but obviously because of COVID, it's prevented me from actually being able to come into the city or into the county and into Rutland, but I'm hoping that that is going to change very soon. So again, to just welcome you here, let's move on to the next slide. Thanks, Liz. Liz is going to be my slide sharer today, is the Neglect Toolkit. And I'm just going to talk you very briefly through a number of slides. And then we've also got some presentations to help you understand a little bit more about how the Neglect Toolkit is being used already. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do question and answer through the presentation, but please do put any comments and questions that you do have into the chat box. And I know that Liz is keeping an eye on the chat box, and we will have a short section towards the end of the launch for us to review some of your questions and try and answer some of them as well. So the Neglect Toolkit was commissioned by Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland Safeguarding Children's Partnerships and the Safeguarding Adult Boards in response to an agreed joint neglect priority. And this toolkit is to offer guidance to practitioners in supporting your work with parents and families, enabling sound analysis and judgments in relation to professional concerns. Now, this actually came out of, as a result of an alternative review. So not a full serious case review, but it involved a 6-year-old child, 6-year-old boy. And over the 6 years of his life, there were a series of missed opportunities to safeguard him because information wasn't being shared in a timely way. There were lots of professionals involved in his life, but there wasn't a significant incident up until towards when he became 6, when he suffered a head injury and a fracture as a result of jumping out of a window because he was scared of what his mum might do to him. But over the period of 6 years, there were lots of missed opportunities. So it was important to review professional involvement. And because it crossed over both adults and children's professions, it was important to work together to develop this toolkit. We've also got within the toolkit, and many of you may also keep up to date with different national reviews that have happened over the years, to track and evidence, because what we know with neglect is that it's not always one significant event that leads professionals to be in the family's lives. More often than not, the family may be known to lots of different professionals, maybe at early help stage, and there may be odd instances that are happening over the lives of the children that aren't actually pulled together in a way that you can understand the behaviours, the frequency or the incidence of those behaviours, and indeed the impact that that is having on children, until maybe the neglect has far advanced as well. And what we understand is that the courts are now looking at tracking and evidence as a way of understanding how neglect has developed over time. So we had the toolkit in 2016, and then just recently there's been a revision of the neglect toolkit, and that's primarily to take into consideration adolescent neglect as well. And these revisions were also due to a serious case review, which we'll talk about in a little bit more, but also includes when babies are also injured as well. So we'll talk about that very quickly in the next slide. Thanks, Liz. So in terms of adolescent neglect, so what you can see there, the changes were needed because of a local serious case review. And this was in relation to a young woman who tried to take her own life. And again, there were a series of things that were happening for her over the years. She'd had a lot of involvement with different professionals. There were issues around her schooling. She suffered 2 bereavements in a short space of time. And she was termed really a hidden or lost child. She lived with her boyfriend and his mum, but they weren't supported. That relationship broke down. She went to live with her older brother. And in terms of what happened, she was on medication to help with anxiety, and partly to do with some of the bereavement issues that she suffered, but she took an overdose. She was also stuck between schools as well. So school had a huge impact in terms of whether she attended, didn't attend, felt settled or otherwise. She was out of school, in fact, for about 12 months. It was a real complex case. But in the midst of that, the neglect wasn't identified and it was actually missed. And that triennial report that came out in 2020 actually addressed the issue around adolescents living with neglect, and that adolescents are particularly vulnerable to having their needs and the risks they face overlooked, because primarily professionals believe that adolescents, young people are much more resilient. And so when you think about self-harming, maybe suicide attempts or other anger issues, they can actually be taken in isolation as opposed to be looking at a pattern of frequency and behaviours as part of an overall neglect pattern. So in using the toolkits, one of the things that the safeguarding partners, your managers and leaders are saying is that you should always approach your work alongside families with transparency, with fairness, but with a demonstrable professional curiosity, seeking out ways to engage with families and young people who may find themselves in challenging or difficult situations that stop them or prevent them from providing the adequate and good care that every child or young person should have. And we all know that, many parents can find themselves in tough circumstances, whether it be environmentally, through poverty, maybe family breakdown, health, education, or other inequalities. And it's important that we hold these different perspectives in our professionalism as we seek to track and pattern whether or not neglect is an issue. So this is why this toolkit is going to be absolutely fantastic to work with. Okay, next slide, please, Liz. Thank you. So within the toolkit, and I don't know if anyone's had the opportunity to actually look through the toolkit as yet, but again, a joint priority is around safeguarding babies that the Safeguarding Children's Partnerships have agreed as really important. So we have safeguarding babies as a priority, but also as a result of the National Panel report about sudden unexplained death in infancy. So that's SUDI. And this report, out of routine, a review of sudden unexpected death in infancy in families where the children are considered at risk of significant harm. So the toolkit includes information about the Lullaby Trust, who do a lot of work and information sharing, awareness raising around safer sleeping, and similarly, more recently, ICON. Babies cry, you can cope. And that's an evidence-based approach to understanding and helping families to cope when babies cry. And if you're not sure what ICON means, the I stands for infant crying is normal. C, comforting methods can help. C, it's okay to walk away. Sorry, O, it's okay to walk away. And N, never ever shake a baby. And you can find out, if you go on to the Safeguarding Partnerships website, you can find out some more information about ICON as well. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. So there are some other changes that are worth mentioning for you as well, which link to the Neglect Toolkit. It's an absolutely fabulous toolkit. We now have, and I've been reliably informed, that the revised LLR thresholds to access services is now published on the website. So that's another good tool to help you when you're using the Neglect Toolkit. And it's got more information around signs and indicators. And there's also a whole table which sets out children and young persons' needs, risks, and thresholds as well. So you can have a look at that. And it's, it should enable you to keep asking the next question. The other report that's just very recently come out, and again, you may or may not have had the chance to have a look at this, but I'd certainly recommend you do that. Read it in conjunction when you're looking at the toolkit and thinking about how you involve men and fathers in the work that you do. So this report by the National Panel is called The Myth of Invisible Men. And what this report shows is that it recognises that the system that we work in, child welfare, child safeguarding, allows men to not be involved. And that all professionals need to involve men in your work, in assessments and engaging them. And that there is a link with babies and involving men from the point of getting to know the mothers. And that this report actually found, and what we do know, is that head trauma is a significant finding where babies have been seriously harmed or killed in this research. So the links to the work of ICON is absolutely crucial. Our systems are not geared up to involve men. So as professionals, we need to be thinking more across the system about how we involve men in a meaningful way. you know, we all realise that it can be quite difficult when there may be aggression, or perhaps men seem to absence themselves from the assessment process. But again, it's important for leaders, managers, for yourselves at the front line to think through the best ways to engage with men, but also to be looking externally at good practice examples as well. Okay, so I think I'm going to stop there, because it's not so much about me, but it's about how is this toolkit being used in practice. And we've got four wonderful examples from our practitioners across City, County and Rutland who are going to be talking about their work. I think we've got two this afternoon, and we've got one video element. So we're going to hear from Jasmine and Brian, and then I think Barbara is the video. Yes, Liz is nodding for me. Okay, so let's start with Jasmine first. Let's over to you, Jasmine, and welcome.
Hi, thank you very much. I'll just introduce myself. So I'm Jasmine Reynolds. I work for the Children and Family Wellbeing Service, and I work with families who have children from the age of 0 up to the age of 19. I've been asked to do this because I recently completed a neglect toolkit with a parent, and there was some really good examples that came out of this, and it was felt that it would be quite useful to share that with you and talk that through with you. So what I want to do is just give a little bit of a background to this family so that you have an idea of what was going on and why the neglect toolkit was used and what the reasoning for that was. So when I was first involved with this family, we had L, the little boy, who lived with his mum, who we'll call C, at their home and spent weekends at his paternal grandmother's home. He had regular contact with his dad, but this was by video chat because dad was in prison. His mum had a partner, N, who often stayed over at their home. And when I completed the neglect toolkit, L was 3 years old. So his mum, C, she herself was a looked after child and had been removed from the care of her mum after neglect, drug and alcohol abuse and violent domestic abuse. So she had experienced that herself when she was a child. I myself have been working with C after a referral was made for behaviour support to the Children and Family Wellbeing Service. Mum had been struggling to manage that with L, and things were getting a bit difficult and she was asking for help. After 2 weeks of me having met her and started to offer some support for her, an incident occurred over a weekend where L had gone to his paternal grandparents' house and they had noticed that there was significant bruising on his bum. A strap meeting was held and social care became involved, and there were other concerns being raised by family members about domestic abuse from N to C, and that L was being neglected at home when in the care of his mum. A police report had also come in over that weekend where the police had visited the home to discussed with mum the referrals and the allegations that had been made, and they reported that the home was not suitable for L to be living in. So at this point, L was placed in the care of his grandparents. So he spent the week with maternal grandparents and the weekends with paternal grandma. And an assessment was being completed by social care to look at what the next step was and what was going to happen to keep him safe. So as part of that assessment, social care requested that a neglect toolkit was completed, and they requested that I complete that with mum because I already had 2 weeks of a relationship with her, and they felt that that would be useful to help them identify what was going on. So when I first discussed this with mum, she was very, very reluctant to do the neglect toolkit. She felt that there were no signs of neglect at home, that she always made sure that Elle was loved and cared for. She had had quite a difficult relationship with social care herself growing up, and she felt that the whole point of this was designed to set her up, and that it was there to make sure that she failed and that there was things pointed out. So I had to have a really good discussion with her at the beginning before we even started the toolkit, to talk to her about how this would give her an opportunity to share her knowledge and to show evidence that actually she was doing the things that she said she was doing, but that it would also give her opportunities to see what she could improve on and what things could be better, so that she could work on that and feel like actually she was achieving something and that she was showing people that she was doing the right things. She did eventually agree, but I think she agreed because she felt she had to. So unfortunately, I'm not sure how interested she was in doing all of those things for those reasons, but she did agree, which is important. So I hadn't completed a neglect toolkit that many times in the past. I'd done maybe 1 or 2 over the last 3 or 4 years. So what I did differently this time was I tried to focus on giving as many sessions as possible to talk this through with her. Mum had her own needs. She had some low level difficulties with concentrating, and so often I found that if I went there for more than half an hour, 35 minutes, we weren't gonna get very far because she would lose concentration and get distracted. So I ended up doing the toolkit over 4 sessions. So one of the difficulties I found was that Elle was not in her care, so it was quite difficult to get some of the evidence for the toolkit when actually her child wasn't with her and wasn't in the home anymore. So, for example, when we were talking about how the child has access to toys or to resources and clean clothes, actually that was quite difficult because all of his toys, or most of his toys, had gone with him and his clothes had gone with him. So what I ended up doing was getting Mum to show me his bedroom and show me where she would keep his clothes. You know, where did he have that wardrobe space? Where are his toys kept? And what toys did she have with her currently? And, you know, where were they kept and how were they stored? So we could try and get around that as much as possible. I also found that actually getting her to do things like give me a tour of her house actually was a really good way, because I could see things and it reminded me actually of things to talk to her about, because as we were going through room to room I could say, okay, yeah, we need to talk about that, or we need to look at this as part of the neglect toolkit. And I actually got her to give me 2 tours of her house. So the first session we walked around her house and she pointed things out to me and we talked about different rooms. But then I did that again on, I think it was the 3rd session, because that was to give her an opportunity to show that either things had improved and she was showing that things had improved, or actually it showed that she was sustaining things that she had already improved on. So it was an opportunity for her to evidence that actually things were going in the right direction, or, you know, if things were going the wrong way and were getting worse, again, that was a way of evidencing that. So the main thing I found with the neglect toolkit for this family was it just opened up some really interesting conversations with Mum, with C, and particularly around kind of adult relationships and the impact that this has on children. Growing up, she'd had quite negative experiences of adult relationships and the impact that that has on children. So her life had been very, very challenging and things had been very difficult. So it was interesting to see how that was now affecting her way of having relationships and parenting. So she'd been in a relationship with N, and there were some concerns that this relationship had resumed despite her saying that they were separated and they weren't together anymore. There were also concerns that there was domestic abuse happening from N to C, and she had in the past been quite adamant that that wasn't true, and she had denied that and felt that there was nothing happening and there were no issues with that at all. But the more we talked through the neglect toolkit and the more we talked about that area of adult relationships and the impact on children, she started to open up a little bit and talk about some occasions where she had been physically assaulted, or when her home and her phone had been, you know, destroyed or smashed up. And actually it was quite interesting because initially she was really, really clear that actually, no, this wouldn't have had an impact on the child because he wasn't there. She gave an example that at one point her partner N had called the dad of the child and said to him, you need to come and collect your child because I'm going to smack your mum, or smack his mum. And she felt that actually that was a really safe way, because what had happened was the child was removed, so therefore didn't see the assault that then happened. But the more we talked about it, the more she started to kind of realise that actually that still would have been quite scary for a 3-year-old, you know, to hear that tone of voice and to hear that language, to then be taken away and come back and see that mum had bruising on her face would have been very, very scary. And she hadn't really thought about it in that way, because for her, she was keeping him safe because she was making sure that he wasn't in the home when that was happening. So it got some really interesting conversations going, and it felt like it was a starting point for her to really think about things in a different light and think about the impact of some of the issues on her child. So another thing that I kind of found quite useful when I was talking to her was she had very strong opinions about where she was scoring on the neglect toolkit, which, you know, is understandable. She had, you know, she wanted to make sure that things were going well and that things weren't, you know, in the red all the time. So I tried to compromise with her as much as possible, in that I would listen to her, I would take on board what she felt was true and where she felt she was scaling herself. And if there were categories where I felt that we were very, very close on that, I would agree with her and we would score at a similar point. So maybe we would score a yellow, so that, you know, we could both agree that it wasn't the best it could be, but it wasn't worrying at that point. But then when there were situations where she felt that things were green and I was thinking they might be an amber or a red, I just had to be really honest with her and say, like, I'm listening to what you're saying and I understand why you're coming from, but actually this is what I think and this is what I believe is the correct score to give this. And actually, when I then filled the neglect toolkit in, I made sure that I included her scoring on there. So we had, I would fill in the box with her initials so that it was seen on there where she felt things were, and what she was considering to be the right scaling for that. And I think in a way that kind of helped, because even though I was being really honest with her, and that's quite difficult sometimes when you're looking at something being very, very significant and serious, actually, I think she at least realised that I was being really honest with her and that I was telling her exactly what I was thinking and I was still listening to her and taking her thoughts into account. So that seemed to work quite well. I have sent an anonymous version or an anonymized version of this to Elizabeth, so I think she may send that round afterwards so that you can see an example of how that looks. Yeah, that's it there, she's got it on the screen. But yeah, so if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them at the end and talk about that a bit more. Hope that helps.
Okay, thank you, Jasmine. Yeah, I just put this up onto the screen, but obviously you can't. We understand that you can't read it sort of very easily. So we're prepared to. It's been anonymised, so we can send it round as a good example after this session to everyone who's attended. Oh, Jasmine's getting a phone call. So is it not
I was
you?
just looking at my phone. It's not me. I thought it was.
Oh, okay.
Thought it was.
Apologies. Right. Okay. So yeah. So that's what we plan to do with the information that Jazz has done for us. Which I mean is, she spent a lot of time preparing that so it can be sent out. So it's really great. I'm really grateful for you to do that, because I think it's really helpful for other people to see it as well. And thank you so much for talking through your use of it, because I thought that was fantastic and it helps people to understand you know, how they can use it, and you know, some of the difficulties of using a tool, because it's not necessarily straightforward all the time, is it? That there's an interplay between you as a worker and how you use tools that are provided for you. So thank you very much for that. Lovely. Right. Kay, just for your information, I don't think Brian is here, so just checking again.
All right.
So
can't see him on the chat.
No, and in fairness to Brian, he did have a day's annual leave today, but he was going to come and do this. So bless him.
All right.
I think, but I could probably show the video now if you're okay with me doing that. Okay, yeah. Lovely. I'll stop sharing this. And
yeah, thanks, Jasmine. That was really, really helpful. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Barbara and I'm a key worker for the Children and Family Wellbeing Service at Leicestershire County Council. Regularly within my role, I use the Neglect Toolkit. I use it both with families to start a conversation about where they are and kind of to involve them in the discussion about why we're worried around neglect about their children, and actually what it is we want to be seeing. Families, you know, don't always respond well when we call it the neglect toolkit. So sometimes I say to families that we just ignore the neglect bit and let's look at it as a toolkit where we can have a conversation about what's going on for you and your family, and actually how we can move you to kind of the more of the green column so that people are less worried about the children in the home. At other times I use it as a desk exercise as part of an assessment, and I can complete that based on the knowledge that I have from other agencies and from conversations of having with the children, and you know, that can then be used as part of an assessment to either show families and agencies that there is a worry, and you know, it can identify the work that we need to do with the family around those specific areas, or you know, in some cases it even shows actually that some of the worries are not founded, because actually when we've gone back and we've spoke to the parents and we've asked them the questions around those topics, you know, it shows that there's not an issue, and maybe just, you know, for example, in the school is not seeing, you know, the full picture, but by completing the neglect toolkit we're able to get a more holistic view of what is going on in the family, so that those worries that people have around the children are reduced. It is a big lengthy document and it does take time to do it, but when I've used it with families, you know, consistently, maybe at the start of my intervention, in the middle, and when we're closing, it really does help to show families the journey that they've been on, you know, and you know, it makes the families feel proud of where they were, you know. So it, for me, you know, I've used it many times, and the document, you know, the toolkit is a positive tool to use, even if it doesn't always give you the results that you expected. You know, it does give you an insight into what's going on for that family there and then, and allows you to have those conversations with the families. So if I think about practice, where I've used it in practice, and can give you an example, we had a referral in about a family, and there was a real worry around home conditions, school attendance, and kind of the children being fed good enough food in the home. School was seeing that children weren't particularly eating well at school, and they thought that kind of the child was losing weight, you know, and that mum kind of presented as being a bit all over the place. When I sat down with mum with the neglect toolkit, I went out and I explained that we were there, you know, just to see actually what's going on. And I always start, when I do it, I start, we'll go for the green is where we should be, and we'll look at the red as to where we don't want to be, you know, kind of if we're in red, we need to be looking at kind of child protection and stepping this up. And what that allowed was for a conversation to take place, and they were able to identify with the food, you know, where we're looking about, do children get access to fresh fruit and vegetables on a regular basis, you know, that meal times are consistent, you know, and you know, that diet is kind of good, you know, or are we down at the red end where the food is not suitable and the parents put their needs first, so that they'll only feed the children when they're kind of thinking of themselves as being hungry. You know, we may have issues with children, you know, hoarding and storing food, and that you know, causes issues also. Through having a conversation with mum, what we discovered was that actually mum does feed them, you know, a very balanced diet. You know, she showed me a fridge. We've got food in there. We've got fruit. We've got vegetables. We've got meat within the freezer. We'd also got chicken nuggets, fish fingers, chips, pizzas. You know, kind of the stuff that you had. But what mum kind of hadn't maybe taken into consideration was that meal times were not always consistent. You know, so breakfast might not be, you know, early in the morning. It might be, you know, on a weekend more at 10 o'clock, and lunch times were, you know, kind of all over the place and sometimes merged into dinner time. So through having that conversation, we were able to highlight actually the quality of food they were getting was really positive, but actually that consistency of when meal times wasn't. So we were able to put a bit of a plan in there with a family to improve that, you know, consistency around meal times. That breakfast was between these hours and lunch at that one, and an evening meal at that one, you know, and that then really helped the children to know that they would get fed, you know, and it to be consistent, you know, but actually what they were feeding. So that opened that conversation. It reduced the school's worries, you know, about that issue. you know, we were able to put a plan in place so that the family were able to move kind of more from the yellow section into the green section, you know, just by changing something. Equally with another family where we've used it, you know, we're looking at kind of supervision of preschool children, you know, about what's acceptable, what's not acceptable around bedtime, co-sleeping, bath time, and those. Again, I sat down with the family to do it, and, you know, again explained what the red was, you know, kind of the child protection end of it, and where the green was, which is kind of the ideal of where we want to be. And again, we were able to negotiate, and by unpicking kind of some of the stuff that Mum was doing, which was causing worry, you know, at nursery, we were able to kind of say, well, actually, to do this more safely, we could do X, Y, Z. You know, we had a plan in there to rearrange kind of the sleeping and the cot and the bedrooms around, so they were safer for the children. You know, again, we were able to have an honest conversation about what's going on. So of the times as a key worker, we complete quite an in-depth assessment, and we're often asked to complete a neglect toolkit just to, you know, to give a picture of what's going on. And again, just sitting at a desk, you know, reading through kind of previous case notes or the referrals, picking up what's worried, you know, completing that, and then going out back to a family and explaining, you know, as part of the assessment, I've completed this. What do you think? You know, again, it's rather than sitting with a family and doing the neglect tool, it's kind of taking it back out to the family and saying, this is what I'm seeing through the referrals and the worries and through the conversations we've had. You know, where do you pick yourself on that? You know, and if I go back to the mum around the food, when we went on to review it, and I did the review as a desk exercise, so not necessarily going through each thing with her, she was really pleased that we'd be able to move things which were in yellow. I think she had the odd one in orange as well, but we were able to move it over to green. So again, she could see the progress that she was making by engaging and accepting the help and support from our service. So yeah, it is a positive tool. It does take effort from you as a worker, but it does give you kind of that information that you need in a different way. Equally, for another family, we've had them come in, and it's not, you know, the referral's been quite negative, and it's been, you know, does it need to sit with us, or do we need to, you know, consider speaking to social care about it? By being able to kind of complete that neglect toolkit is kind of got rid of some of the worries that have been shared, because we've been able to prove through completing that those worries even were that, you know, weren't there, and it maybe been a bit of a misunderstanding, you know, or that the things that have been in progress as progress has been addressed by the family. So maybe those worries have been reduced, you know, by using that.
You're on mute, Liz. Were you speaking?
I keep unmuting myself and then remuting myself. I do apologise for that. Yeah. Oh, classic. Right. So, yeah, I think actually that kind of played into what you were saying as well, Jazz. You know, so similar points that were made about how engaging with the family helped you to have other conversations as well. So, yeah, I thought that was really kind of quite, yeah. They sort of, oh, what am I saying? You know, they merged together the two conversations. I still don't think that we have Brian here, unfortunately. So if we can move on to the next slide, which is any questions. Are you all right with that, Kay?
Yes. I mean, if there's any questions at all, then, you know, Jasmine is probably going to be in the hot seat. for most of it, because you've got the practice, and that is absolutely brilliant. But if there are any other questions around the toolkit itself, I know Liz will be able to answer, and probably Gary or Pretty as well. I've got Casey. Casey's hand is up. Do you want to ask your question, Casey?
Hi, thanks for that. That was really useful. I was just wondering, so I'm here today sort of with an educational background, so working within education currently. I was just wondering, I don't necessarily envisage it ever being something that we would complete, but it's really helpful to have an overview of that. My question really was around, if this had been carried out and there was anything we would need to be aware of, would it just be sort of made known on Mosaic?
I mean, from my perspective, if I'm working with a family, I'm working with the other professionals, so I try and keep everybody involved with everything anyway. So obviously, if I completed it and there was things coming up that I felt were important that other services knew, I'd be sharing that, or I'd be talking to the parent about, you know, sharing that. I mean, parents are aware that we talk to other services anyway. We have that discussion with them. So, but yeah, I would be sharing that with everyone.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Casey. Okay, we've got Michelle Kelly, who's the Senior Specialist Nurse Safeguarding Children.
Hi, just a quick question. Obviously, when children come into our hospital and we were querying about possible neglect, we couldn't see every aspect of the neglect toolkit. It'd be very difficult for us to do the whole thing. Is there any benefit in doing parts of it, or is it a tool that's best completed all in one by like one person, or could we then like hand it over to the health visitor to finish off type thing?
I'm probably not the best one to answer that.
Okay. All right. So, if Gary, do you want to respond?
Sorry, this is Pratima. Can I just say that I don't know what Gary thinks, but hopefully he agrees. But this is Pratima from the Safeguarding Board Officer for the Leicester City Children's Safeguarding Partnership Board. My view would be that the neglect toolkit is for use of how best you can use it to assess neglect and evidence that. So I would say if you felt that a colleague could help complete parts of it, then I think they should. So it gives you a fuller picture of what people kind of look at from their own perspectives around neglect or that person's family or circumstances. But I think because each professional and each service or each department will look at it from a very different angle. And then when you put it all together, it gives you a fuller picture. That's what I would say.
No, that's lovely.
There isn't any kind of given way of using tools. I think it's the best way you can use it.
No, lovely. Thank you.
Thanks, Pretty. Gary?
Yeah, there has been examples in the past where people have sat down as a group of professionals and completed the form away from the family just to get an idea of what the groups of professional, maybe multi-agency, thought of it as a whole. And then they go, if they feel the need to go and actually do a physical assessment, they can also do that as well. I also wonder whether Jasmine could allay the fears. The size of the document does put some people off. And I imagine that the more you use it, the easier it is. So perhaps Jasmine could just mention how she feels about that.
Yeah, I mean, it is a fairly hefty document, but a big part of it is actually the information that you use to understand what goes in each section, because it seems like a really long document, and then actually when you look at the bits that you've got to fill in, it's not as long as you think it's going to be. So what I tended to do was I would like pre-read the sections that I was going to do that day, and I would make notes of any questions that I was going to ask to try and prompt the answers I was looking for, and then I would just read through those questions with that parent or get them to show me the things that I was looking for. So I think once you've done it a couple of times and you've got your kind of pre-ready list of things that you're going to ask for and what you're looking for, it does get much quicker and much easier because you know exactly what you're looking for.
Okay, thanks, Jasmine. And we've got Pratima.
Oh, I was just going to say that when the original toolkit was put together in 2016, I know that the person who helped put it together, one of the things that we looked at was the fact that it's a tool to be used for all kinds of things that perhaps you are concerned about. So, you know, it is a tool that you can dip in and dip out of particular things that maybe you've spotted and want some more assurance around. And then it's also one of those that you can add to it as you go along, because you might spot one thing and then you might spot another thing and then you might spot another thing. So it's one of those tools that you can dip in and dip out of. Mm-hmm. So I mean different sections of it. That's what I meant.
Great, thank you. Gary, you've got your hand up still. Is that?
No, it's a new one. Just another quick example from previously is when somebody used the assessment tool 2 or 3 times and found it very useful in the family court, and they were commended on their use of it in showing the evidence of either improvement or not improvement towards the case.
Great, thanks, Gary. Would that particular case that you've mentioned, is that anonymised anywhere that professionals can see and have a read through?
I don't have that, but I could try and find out. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because I think the more examples that are available, the better. And as you know, you were saying, it's, you know, and Jasmine was saying, it's quite a hefty document, and maybe people are a bit worried about having to work their way through that. But if they can actually see some more examples of how well it's been used, I think that would be absolutely great to put on the website. Yeah, great. Any more questions? Reflections? Anyone else used the toolkit? Daryl. Hi, Daryl.
Hi there. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I've just moved over roles in our Children and Family Wellbeing Service in Leicestershire, but previously I was a team leader, so I would use the Neglect Toolkit within my supervisions. So as an extra tool to explore a case with a worker where they were raising thoughts around it. Obviously, the challenge would be for them to go away and use the toolkit themselves in their practice, just as Barb illustrated as a desk exercise to help them think it through. And then as Jasmine and Barb both talked about, going out to the families to use it. But in that first instance, when you're stuck in a case or when you're really trying to hone in on what the worry is with a worker, having the different checkboxes through the toolkit can be really useful in that supervision discussion, and it can help move the conversation on. So I just wanted to throw in that as an additional use from a management perspective, as well as the evidence and the assessment perspective.
Great, thanks, Darren. I think it's so important to have your perspective as a manager and how you've been able to use that with a worker in the supervision process to help them to focus, but also to prepare for the next visit. So these are the things that you might want to be looking at, and then thinking about the kinds of questions they'd want to ask. So yeah, great example. Thanks, Daryl. Okay, so I've got the ARC preschool.
Yeah, hi. My name's Alison and I'm the manager of the ARC, and I'm thankful to say that I haven't had to use the toolkit. However, just listening to people's examples today, certainly from my point of view in my setting, it feels as though this could be a really good working document. So if there was an issue with a family that we were worried about, we could use this toolkit as an ongoing working document through the time that that family's with us. So it could prove to be really invaluable if we've got that issue. Would that be the right way to use it as a working thing for a year, say, while we've got a family with us?
I mean, I'm going to say yes, absolutely, Alison. The toolkit is there for all safeguarding partners. And as I was saying earlier, in terms of some of the reviews that have been published, it's the mismatch of information, that the information hasn't been collated in a way that's been able to track and evidence where, you know, neglect is becoming a feature. So if you're able to use that within the school environment, and, you know, you're starting to track, you know, maybe some worries, some concerns, maybe kind of like low level, but as the low levels, you know, stack up and you've got the toolkit, then it helps you in terms of being able to share that information with other professionals with children's services as well. So I would definitely say yes, go ahead and use it.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions?
I can see a hand up. TP.
Can't see. I can't.
TP or PT, I'm not sure which.
Oh, okay. Can't see that hand up.
It's gone now.
Oh, it's gone. Okay. All right.
Change the
So
mind.
if you did have a question, can you just put your hand up again, and then I'll just make sure I can see it in the chat, on the participants list. I can't see anyone else's hands up at the moment. Okay. All right. Well, we're not going to try and extract any more teeth. We know that you are all very, very busy people, and really appreciate you taking the time out to be with us this afternoon. So if we could just go to the next slides then. So here are some links for you to take away. So the Neglect Toolkit is on the websites that you can access now and download. And even if you're not using it immediately, just to have a look through will, you know, probably reduce perhaps some of the anxiety you're thinking about. Gosh, it's going to be a huge toolkit. How do I use it? How does it link in with my other work that I'm doing? So just to have a look through it yourself, and you can see it is very accessible. It's very readable, and help you in terms of thinking about how you continue to work with families. Alongside that, there's a checklist and score sheet as well. So when you're using the toolkit, there's a score sheet that you can actually work through with families. And don't forget to think about the adolescents as well as part of this. So everywhere through the toolkit, there is reference to how neglect can impact on adolescents. So absolutely all the way through the toolkit, that is there as well. And then Leicester Safeguarding Board has got a web page on neglect as well. So you can see that. Training, please sign up to training using your usual method through Eventbrite. And then also Festival of Practice between the 8th and the 12th of November as well. So have a look on the Eventbrite to see what kind of events are coming up through the Festival of Practice, and please sign up. Okay. Is there anything else, Liz or Gary, that you want to mention before we say thank you? You keep muting yourself.
Yeah, sorry, I know it's...
You're back.
Anyway,
You're back in the room.
I'm back in the room. With regard to training, we do have a session on neglect coming up in October, but it is full. But I wanted to reassure people that when we get sessions that fill up quickly, we recommission them. So we're looking at recommissioning that so that people can attend that. And also with regard to the Festival of Practice, so that's for mainly for sort of social care. There is a session being done in that by Jane Whiffin, who helped to review this neglect toolkit. So we'll share that when we get it, but look out for it as well. So just for information. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks for that, Liz. All right. I think we could probably say thank you to everyone now. Thanks for attending. Thanks again, Jasmine, for your input as well. Thank you for your questions and reflections. And hopefully you will find the Neglect Toolkit really, really helpful for you as you go forward. So thanks very much and enjoy your afternoon. Bye for now.